and keen, fixed to the back of a wild maker. He shied away from the thought of riding the giant worms, asking himself, or is Alia yet to be born? I was on Razia, Paul recalled. We went raiding to recover the water of our dead in Arrakis, and I found the remains of my father in the funeral pyre. I enshrined the skull of my father in a Fremen rock mound overlooking Harg Pass. Or was that a thing yet to be? My wounds are real, Paul told himself. My scars are real. The shrine of my father's skull is real. Still in the dreamlike state, Paul remembered that Hera, James's wife, had intruded on him once to say there'd been a fight in the Sietch corridor. That had been the interim Sietch, before the women and children had been sent into the deep south. Hera had stood there in the entrance to the inner chamber, the black wings of her hair tied back by water rings on a chain. She had held aside the chamber's hangings and told him that Chani had just killed someone. This happened, Paul told himself. This was real, not born out of its time and subject to change. Paul remembered he had rushed out to find Chani standing beneath the yellow globes of the corridor, clad in a brilliant blue wraparound robe with hood thrown back, a flush of exertion on her elfin features. She had been sheathing her crysknife. A huddled group had been hurrying away down the corridor with a burden. And Paul remembered telling himself, you always know when they're carrying a body. Chani's water rings, worn openly in Sietch on a cord around her neck, tinkled as she turned toward him. "Chani, what is this?" he asked. "I dispatched one who came to challenge you in single combat, Usul." "You killed him?" "Yes. But perhaps I should have left him for Hera." And Paul recalled how the faces of the people around them had showed appreciation for these words. Even Hera had laughed. "But he came to challenge me." "You trained me yourself in the weirding way, Usul." "Certainly, but you shouldn't. I was born in the desert, Usul. I know how to use a crysknife." He suppressed his anger, tried to talk reasonably. "This may all be true, Chani, but I am no longer a child hunting scorpions in the Sietch by the light of a hand globe, Usul. I do not play games." Paul glared at her, caught by the odd ferocity beneath her casual attitude. "He was not worthy, Usul," Chani said. "I'd not disturb your meditations with the likes of him." She moved closer, looking at him out of the corners of her eyes, dropping her voice so that only he might hear. "And, beloved, when it's learned that a challenger may face me and be brought to shameful death by Muad'Dib's woman, there'll be fewer challengers." Yes, Paul told himself. That had certainly happened. It was true past. And the number of challengers testing the new blade of Muad'Dib did drop dramatically. Somewhere in a world not of the dream there was a hint of motion, the cry of a night bird. "I dream," Paul reassured himself. "It's the spice meal." Still there was about him a feeling of abandonment. He wondered if it might be possible that his Ru spirit had slipped over somehow into the world where the Fremen believed he had his true existence, into the Alam al-Mithal, the world of similitudes, that metaphysical realm where all physical limitations were removed. And he knew fear at the thought of such a place, because removal of all limitations meant removal of all points of reference. In the landscape of a myth, he could not orient himself and say, "I am I because I am here." His mother had said once, "The people are divided, some of them, in how they think of you." I must be waking from the dream, Paul told himself. For this had happened, these words from his mother, the Lady Jessica, who was now a Reverend Mother of the Fremen, these words had passed through reality. Jessica was fearful of the religious relationship between himself and the Fremen, Paul knew. She didn't like the fact that people of both Sietch and Graben referred to Muad'Dib as him, and she went questioning among the tribes, sending out her Sayadina spies, collecting their answers and brooding on them. She had quoted a Bene Gesserit proverb to him. When religion and politics travel in the same cart, the riders believe nothing can stand in their way. Their movement becomes headlong, faster and faster and faster. They put aside all thought of obstacles and forget that a precipice does not show itself to the man in a blind rush until it's too late. Paul recalled that he had sat there in his mother's quarters, in the inner chamber shrouded by dark hangings with their surfaces covered by woven patterns out of Fremen mythology. He had sat there, hearing her out, noting the way she was always observing, even when her eyes were lowered. Her oval face had new lines in it at the corners of the mouth, but the hair was still like polished bronze. The wide-set green eyes, though, hid beneath their overcasting of spice-imbued blue. "The Fremen have a simple, practical religion," he said. "Nothing about religion is simple," she warned. But Paul, seeing the clouded future that still hung over them, found himself swayed by anger. He could only say, "Religion unifies our forces. It's our mystique." "You deliberately cultivate this air, this bravura," she charged. "You never cease indoctrinating." "Thus you yourself taught me," he said. But she had been full of contentions and arguments that day. It had been the day of the circumcision ceremony for little Leto. Paul had understood some of the reasons for her upset. She had never accepted his liaison, the marriage of youth, with Chani. But Chani had produced an Atreides son, and Jessica had found herself unable to reject the child with the mother. Jessica had stirred finally under his stare, said, "You think me an unnatural mother?" "Of course not." "I see the way you watch me when I'm with your sister. You don't understand about your sister." "I know why Alia is different," he said. "She was unborn, part of you when you changed the water of life. She—" "You know nothing of it." And Paul, suddenly unable to express the knowledge gained out of its time, said only, "I don't think you unnatural." She saw his distress, said, "There is a thing, son." "Yes." "I do love your Chani. I accept her." This was real, Paul told himself. This wasn't the imperfect vision to be changed by the twistings out of time's own birth. The reassurance gave him a new hold on his world. Bits of solid reality began to dip through the dream state into his awareness. He knew suddenly that he was in a heir, a desert camp. Chani had planted their still tent on flower sand for its softness. That could only mean Chani was nearby. Chani, his soul. Chani, his sihaya, sweet as the desert spring. Chani, up from the palmaries of the deep south. Now he remembered her singing a sand shanty to him in the time for sleep. "O my soul, have no taste for paradise this night, and I swear by Shai-Hulud you will go there, obedient to my love." And she had sung the walking song lovers shared on the sand, its rhythm like the drag of the dunes against the feet. "Tell me of thine eyes, and I will tell thee of thy heart. Tell me of thy feet, and I will tell thee of thy hands. Tell me of thy sleeping, and I will tell thee of thy waking. Tell me of thy desires, and I will tell thee of thy need." He had heard someone strumming a balisette in another tent, and he'd thought then of Gurney Halleck. Reminded by the familiar instrument, he had thought of Gurney, whose face he had seen in a smuggler band, but who had not seen him, could not see him, or know of him, lest that inadvertently lead the Harkonnens to the son of the Duke they had killed. But the style of the player in the night, the distinctiveness of the fingers on the balisette strings, brought the real musician back to Paul's memory. It had been Chat the Leaper, captain of the Fedekin, leader of the death commandos who guarded Muad'Dib. "We are in the desert," Paul remembered. "We are in the central Erg, beyond the Harkonnen patrols. I am here to walk the sand, to lure a maker and mount him by my own cunning, that I may be a Fremen entire." He felt now the Maula pistol at his belt, the crysknife. He felt the silence surrounding him. It was that special pre-morning silence when the night birds had gone and the day creatures had not yet signaled their alertness to their enemy, the sun. "You must ride the sand in the light of day, that Shai-Hulud shall see and know you have no fear," Stilgar had said. "Thus we turn our time around and set ourselves to sleep this night."
This ends Disc 15. Dune, Disc 16.
Quietly Paul sat up, feeling the looseness of a slacked stillsuit around his body, the shadowed still tent beyond. So softly he moved, yet Chani heard him. She spoke from the tent's gloom, another shadow there. "It's not yet full light, beloved." "Sehaya," he said, speaking with half a laugh in his voice. "You call me your desert spring," she said, "but this day I'm thy goad. I am the Sayadina who watches that the rites be obeyed." He began tightening his stillsuit. "You told me once the words of the Kitab al-Ibar," he said. "You told me, 'Woman is thy field. Go then to thy field and till it.'" "I am the mother of thy firstborn," she agreed. He saw her in the greyness, matching him movement for movement, securing her stillsuit for the open desert. "You should get all the rest you can," she said. He recognized her love for him, speaking then, and chided her gently. "The Sayadina of the Watch does not caution or warn the candidate." She slid across to his side, touched his cheek with her palm. "Today I am both the Watcher and the woman." "You should have left this duty to another," he said. "Waiting is bad enough at best," she said. "I'd sooner be at thy side." He kissed her palm before securing the face-flap of his suit, then turned and cracked the seal of the tent. The air that came into them held the chill, not quite dryness that would precipitate trace dew in the dawn. With it came the smell of a pre-spice mass, the mass they had detected off to the northeast, and that told them there would be a maker nearby. Paul crawled through the sphincter opening, stood on the sand, and stretched the sleep from his muscles. A faint green-pearl luminescence etched the eastern horizon. The tents of his troop were small, false dunes around him in the gloom. He saw movement off to the left, the guard, and knew they had seen him. They knew the peril he faced this day. Each Fremen had faced it. They gave him this last few moments of isolation now that he might prepare himself. It must be done today, he told himself. He thought of the power he wielded in the face of the pogrom, the old men who sent their sons to him to be trained in the weirding way of battle, the old men who listened to him now in council and followed his plans, the men who returned to pay him that highest Fremen compliment, "Your plan worked, Muad'Dib." Yet the meanest and smallest of the Fremen warriors could do a thing that he had never done. And Paul knew his leadership suffered from the omnipresent knowledge of this difference between them. He had not ridden the Maker. Oh, he'd gone up with the others for training trips and raids, but he had not made his own voyage. Until he did, his world was bounded by the abilities of others. No true Fremen could permit this. Until he did this thing himself, even the great Southlands, the area some 20 thumpers beyond the Erg, were denied him, unless he ordered a palanquin and rode like a reverend mother or one of the sick and wounded. Memory returned to him of his wrestling with his inner awareness during the night. He saw a strange parallel here. If he mastered the Maker, his rule was strengthened. If he mastered the inward eye, this carried its own measure of command. But beyond them both lay the clouded area, the great unrest, where all the universe seemed embroiled. The differences in the ways he comprehended the universe haunted him. Accuracy matched with inaccuracy. He saw it in situ. Yet when it was born, when it came into the pressures of reality, the now had its own life and grew with its own subtle differences. Terrible purpose remained. Race consciousness remained. And over all loomed the jihad, bloody and wild. Chani joined him outside the tent, hugging her elbows, looking up at him from the corners of her eyes the way she did when she studied his mood. "Tell me again about the waters of thy birth world, Usul," she said. He saw that she was trying to distract him, ease his mind of tensions before the deadly test. It was growing lighter, and he noted that some of his Fedekin were already striking their tents. "I'd rather you told me about the Sietch and about our son," he said. "Does our Leto yet hold my mother in his palm?" "It's Alia he holds as well," she said. "And he grows rapidly. He'll be a big man." "What's it like in the south?" he asked. "When you ride the Maker, you'll see for yourself," she said. "But I wish to see it first through your eyes." "It's powerfully lonely," she said. He touched the Nezhoni scarf at her forehead where it protruded from her still-suit cap. "Why will you not talk about the Sietch?" "I have talked about it. The Sietch is a lonely place without our men. It's a place of work. We labor in the factories and the potting rooms. There are weapons to be made, poles to plant that we may forecast the weather, spice to collect for the bribes. There are dunes to be planted to make them grow and to anchor them. There are fabrics and rugs to make, fuel cells to charge. There are children to train that the tribe's strength may never be lost." "Is nothing, then, pleasant in the Sietch?" he asked. "The children are pleasant. We observe the rites. We have sufficient food. Sometimes one of us may come north to be with her man. Life must go on." "My sister Alia, is she accepted yet by the people?" Chani turned toward him in the growing dawnlight. Her eyes bored into him. "It's a thing to be discussed another time, beloved." "Let us discuss it now." "You should conserve your energies for the test," she said. He saw that he had touched something sensitive, hearing the withdrawal in her voice. "The unknown brings its own worries," he said. Presently she nodded, said, "There is yet misunderstanding because of Alia's strangeness. The women are fearful because a child, little more than an infant, talks of things that only an adult should know. They don't understand the change in the womb that made Alia different." "There is trouble?" he asked, and he thought, "I've seen visions of trouble over Alia." Chani looked toward the growing line of the sunrise. Some of the women banded to appeal to the Reverend Mother. They demanded she exorcise the demon in her daughter. They quoted the scripture, "Suffer not a witch to live among us." And what did my mother say to them? She recited the law and sent the women away, abashed. She said, "If Alia incites trouble, it is the fault of authority for not foreseeing and preventing the trouble." And she tried to explain how the change had worked on Alia in the womb, but the women were angry because they had been embarrassed. They went away muttering. There will be trouble because of Alia, he thought. A crystal blowing of sand touched the exposed portions of his face, bringing the scent of the pre-spice mass. El Sayal, the rain of sand that brings the morning, he said. He looked out across the grey light of the desert landscape, the landscape beyond pity, the sand that was form absorbed in itself. Dry lightning streaked a dark corner to the south, sign that a storm had built up its static charge there. The roll of thunder boomed long after. "The voice that beautifies the land," Chani said. More of his men were stirring out of their tents. Guards were coming in from the rims. Everything around him moved smoothly in the ancient routine that required no orders. "Give as few orders as possible," his father had told him, once, long ago. "Once you've given orders on a subject, you must always give orders on that subject." The Fremen knew this rule instinctively. The troop's watermaster began the morning shanty, adding to it now the call for the right to initiate a sand rider. "The world is a carcass," the man chanted, his voice wailing across the dunes. "Who can turn away the angel of death? What Shai-Hulud has decreed must be." Paul listened, recognizing that these were the words that also began the death chant of his Fedaykin, the words the death commandos recited as they hurled themselves into battle. Will there be a rock shrine here this day to mark the passing of another soul? Paul asked himself. Will Fremen stop here in the future, each to add another stone and think on Muad'Dib, who died in this place? He knew this was among the alternatives today, a fact along lines of the future radiating from this position in time-space. The imperfect vision plagued him. The more he resisted his terrible purpose and fought against the coming of the jihad, the greater the turmoil that wove through his prescience. His entire future was becoming like a river hurtling toward a chasm, the violent nexus beyond which all was fog and clouds. "Stilgar approaches," Chani said. "I must stand apart now, beloved. Now I must be Sayadina and observe the rite, that it may be reported truly in the chronicles." She looked up at him, and, for a moment, her reserve slipped. Then she had herself under control. "When this is past, I shall prepare thy breakfast with my own hands," she said. She turned away. Stilgar moved toward him across the flower sand, stirring up little dust puddles. The dark niches of his eyes remained steady on Paul with their untamed stare. The glimpse of black beard above the stillsuit mask, the lines of craggy cheeks could have been wind-etched from the native rock for all their movement. The man carried Paul's banner on its staff, the green and black banner with a water tube in the staff, that already was a legend in the land. Half pridefully, Paul thought, I cannot do the simplest thing without its becoming a legend. They will mark how I parted from Chani, how I greet Stilgar, every move I make this day. Live or die, it is a legend. I must not die, then it will be only legend and nothing to stop the jihad. Stilgar planted the staff in the sand beside Paul, dropped his hands to his sides. The blue within blue eyes remained level and intent, and Paul thought how his own eyes already were assuming this mask of color from the spice. "They denied us the Hajj," Stilgar said with ritual solemnity. As Chani had taught him, Paul responded, "Who can deny a Fremen the right to walk or ride where he wills?" "I am a Naib," Stilgar said, "never to be taken alive. I am a leg of the death tripod that will destroy our foes." Silence settled over them. Paul glanced at the other Fremen scattered over the sand beyond Stilgar, the way they stood without moving for this moment of personal prayer. And he thought of how the Fremen were a people whose living consisted of killing, an entire people who had lived with rage and grief all of their days, never once considering what might take the place of either, except for a dream with which Liet Kynes had infused them before his death. "Where is the Lord who led us through the land of desert and of pits?" Stilgar asked. "He is ever with us," the Fremen chanted. Stilgar squared his shoulders, stepped closer to Paul, and lowered his voice. "Now remember what I told you. Do it simply and directly, nothing fancy. Among our people, we ride the Maker at the age of 12. You are more than 6 years beyond that age and not born to this life. You don't have to impress anyone with your courage. We know you are brave. All you must do is call the Maker and ride him." "I will remember," Paul said. "See that you do. I'll not have you shame my teaching." Stilgar pulled a plastic rod about a meter long from beneath his robe. The thing was pointed at one end, had a spring-wound clapper at the other end. "I prepared this thumper myself. It's a good one. Take it." Paul felt the warm smoothness of the plastic as he accepted the thumper. "Shishakli has your hooks," Stilgar said. "He'll hand them to you as you step out onto that dune over there." He pointed to his right. "Call a big Maker, Usul. Show us the way." Paul marked the tone of Stilgar's voice, half ritual and half that of a worried friend. In that instant the sun seemed to bound above the horizon. The sky took on the silvered grey blue that warned this would be a day of extreme heat and dryness even for Arrakis. "It is the time of the scalding day," Stilgar said, and now his voice was entirely ritual. "Go, Usul, and ride the Maker. Travel the sand as a leader of men." Paul saluted his banner, noting how the green and black flag hung limply now that the dawn wind had died. He turned toward the dune Stilgar had indicated, a dirty tan slope with an S-track crest. Already most of the troop was moving out in the opposite direction, climbing the other dune that had sheltered their camp. One robed figure remained in Paul's path. Shishakli, a squad leader of the Fedaykin, only his slope-lidded eyes visible between stillsuit cap and mask. Shishakli presented 2 thin whip-like shafts as Paul approached. The shafts were about 1.5 meters long, with glistening plasteel hoods at one end, roughened at the other end for a firm grip. Paul accepted them both in his left hand as required by the ritual. "They are my own hooks," Shishakli said in a husky voice. "They never have failed." Paul nodded, maintaining the necessary silence, moved past the man and up the dune slope. At the crest he glanced back, saw the troop scattering like a flight of insects, their robes fluttering. He stood alone now on the sandy ridge with only the horizon in front of him, the flat and unmoving horizon. This was a good dune Stilgar had chosen, higher than its companions for the viewpoint vantage. Stooping, Paul planted the thumper deep into the windward face, where the sand was compacted and would give maximum transmission to the drumming. Then he hesitated, reviewing the lessons, reviewing the life-and-death necessities that faced him. When he threw the latch, the thumper would begin its summons. Across the sand, a giant worm, a Maker, would hear and come to the drumming. With the whip-like hook staffs, Paul knew, he could mount the Maker's high, curving back. For as long as a forward edge of a worm's ring segment was held open by a hook, open to admit abrasive sand into the more sensitive interior, the creature would not retreat beneath the desert. It would, in fact, roll its gigantic body to bring the opened segment as far away from the desert surface as possible. "I am a sand rider," Paul told himself. He glanced down at the hooks in his left hand, thinking that he had only to shift those hooks down the curve of a Maker's immense side to make the creature roll and turn, guiding it where he willed. He had seen it done. He had been helped up the side of a worm for a short ride in training. The captive worm could be ridden until it lay exhausted and quiescent upon the desert surface, and a new Maker must be summoned. Once he was past this test, Paul knew, he was qualified to make the 20-thumper journey into the Southland, to rest and restore himself. Into the south where the women and the families had been hidden, from the pogrom, among the new palmeries and sietch warrens. He lifted his head and looked to the south, reminding himself that the maker summoned wild from the erg was an unknown quantity, and the one who summoned it was equally unknown to this test. "You must gauge the approaching maker carefully," Stilgar had explained. "You must stand close enough that you can mount it as it passes, yet not so close that it engulfs you." With abrupt decision, Paul released the thumper's latch. The clapper began revolving, and the summons drummed through the sand, a measured lump, lump, lump. He straightened, scanning the horizon, remembering Stilgar's words. "Judge the line of approach carefully. Remember, a worm seldom makes an unseen approach to a thumper. Listen all the same. You may often hear it before you see it." And Chani's words of caution, whispered at night when her fear for him overcame her, filled his mind. "When you take your stand along the Maker's path, you must remain utterly still. You must think like a patch of sand. Hide beneath your cloak and become a little Dune in your very essence." Slowly he scanned the horizon, listening, watching for the signs he had been taught. It came from the southeast, a distant hissing, a sand whisper. Presently he saw the faraway outline of the creature's track against the dawn light, and realized he had never before seen a maker this large, never heard of one this size. It appeared to be more than half a league long, and the rise of the sand wave at its cresting head was like the approach of a mountain. "This is nothing I have seen by vision or in life," Paul cautioned himself. He hurried across the path of the thing to take his stand, caught up entirely by the rushing needs of this moment.
Control the coinage and the courts. Let the rabble have the rest. Thus the Padishah Emperor advised you. And he tells you, if you want profits, you must rule. There is truth in these words, but I ask myself, who are the rabble and who are the ruled? Muad'Dib's secret message to the Landsraad from Arrakis Awakening by the Princess Irulan.
A thought came unbidden to Jessica's mind. Paul will be undergoing his Sandrider test at any moment now. They tried to conceal this fact from me, but it's obvious. And Chani has gone on some mysterious errand. Jessica sat in her resting chamber, catching a moment of quiet between the night's classes. It was a pleasant chamber, but not as large as the one she had enjoyed in Sietch Tabr before their flight from the pogrom. Still, this place had thick rugs on the floor, soft cushions, a low coffee table near at hand, multicolored hangings on the walls, and soft yellow glow globes overhead. The room was permeated with the distinctive acrid, furry odor of a Fremen sietch that she had come to associate with a sense of security. Yet she knew she would never overcome a feeling of being in an alien place. It was the harshness that the rugs and hangings attempted to conceal. A faint tinkling, drumming, slapping penetrated to the resting chamber. Jessica knew it for a birth celebration, probably Subier's. Her time was near. And Jessica knew she'd see the baby soon enough, a blue-eyed cherub brought to the Reverend Mother for blessing. She knew also that her daughter Alia would be at the celebration and would report on it. It was not yet time for the nightly prayer of parting. They wouldn't have started a birth celebration near the time of ceremony that mourned the slave raids of Poritrin, Bela Tegeus, Rosak, and Harmonthep. Jessica sighed. She knew she was trying to keep her thoughts off her son and the dangers he faced. The pit traps with their poisoned barbs, the Harkonnen raids, although these were growing fewer as the Fremen took their toll of aircraft and raiders with the new weapons Paul had given them. And the natural dangers of the desert, makers and thirst and dust chasms. She thought of calling for coffee, and with the thought came that ever-present awareness of paradox in the Fremen way of life. How well they lived in these Sietch caverns compared to the Graben Pions. Yet how much more they endured in the open Hajar of the desert than anything the Harkonnen bondsmen endured. A dark hand inserted itself through the hangings beside her, deposited a cup upon the table, and withdrew. From the cup arose the aroma of spiced coffee. An offering from the birth celebration, Jessica thought. She took the coffee and sipped it, smiling at herself. In what other society of our universe, she asked herself, could a person of my station accept an anonymous drink and quaff that drink without fear? I could alter any poison now before it did me harm, of course, but the donor doesn't realize this. She drained the cup, feeling the energy and lift of its contents, hot and delicious. And she wondered what other society would have such a natural regard for her privacy and comfort that the giver would intrude only enough to deposit the gift, and not inflict her with the donor. Respect and love had sent the gift, with only a slight tinge of fear. Another element of the incident forced itself into her awareness. She had thought of coffee, and it had appeared. There was nothing of telepathy here, she knew. It was the Tao, the oneness of the Sietch community, a compensation from the subtle poison of the spice diet they shared. The great mass of the people could never hope to attain the enlightenment the spice seed brought to her. They had not been trained and prepared for it. Their minds rejected what they could not understand or encompass. Still they felt and reacted sometimes like a single organism. And the thought of coincidence never entered their minds. Has Paul passed his test on the sand? Jessica asked herself. He's capable, but accident can strike down even the most capable. The waiting. It's the dreariness, she thought. You can wait just so long, then the dreariness of the waiting overcomes you. There was all manner of waiting in their lives. More than 2 years we've been here, she thought, and twice that number at least to go, before we can even hope to think of trying to wrest Arrakis from the Harkonnen governor, the Mudir Naya, the beast Rabban. Reverend Mother? The voice from outside the hangings at her door was that of Hara, the other woman in Paul's menage. Yes, Hara. The hangings parted, and Hara seemed to glide through them. She wore Sietch sandals, a red-yellow wraparound that exposed her arms almost to the shoulders. Her black hair was parted in the middle and swept back like the wings of an insect, flat and oily against her head. The jutting, predatory features were drawn into an intense frown. Behind Hara came Alia, a girl child of about 2 years. Seeing her daughter, Jessica was caught, as she frequently was, by Alia's resemblance to Paul at that age, the same wide-eyed solemnity to her questing look, the dark hair and firmness of mouth. But there were subtle differences, too, and it was in these that most adults found Alia disquieting. The child, little more than a toddler, carried herself with a calmness and awareness beyond her years. Adults were shocked to find her laughing at a subtle play of words between the sexes. Or they'd catch themselves listening to her half-lisping voice, still blurred as it was by an unformed soft palate, and discover in her words sly remarks that could only be based on experiences no 2-year-old had ever encountered. Hara sank to a cushion with an exasperated sigh, frowned at the child. "Alia?" Jessica motioned to her daughter. The child crossed to a cushion beside her mother, sank to it, and clasped her mother's hand. The contact of flesh restored that mutual awareness they had shared since before Alia's birth. It wasn't a matter of shared thoughts, although there were bursts of that if they touched while Jessica was changing the spice poison for a ceremony. It was something larger, an immediate awareness of another living spark, a sharp and poignant thing, a nerve simpatico that made them emotionally one. In the formal manner that befitted a member of her son's household, Jessica said, "Subachul kuhar hara. This night finds you well?" With the same traditional formality, she said, "Subach nar. I am well." The words were almost toneless. Again she sighed. Jessica sensed amusement from Alia. "My brother's Ganima is annoyed with me," Alia said in her half-lisp. Jessica marked the term Alia used to refer to Hara, Ganima. In the subtleties of the Fremen tongue, the word meant something acquired in battle, and with the added overtone that the something no longer was used for its original purpose. An ornament, a spearhead used as a curtain-weight. Hara scowled at the child. "Don't try to insult me, child. I know my place." "What have you done this time, Alia?" Jessica asked. Hara answered, "Not only has she refused to play with the other children today, but she intruded where—" "I hid behind the hangings and watched Subie's child being born," Alia said. "It's a boy. He cried and cried. What a set of lungs. When he'd cried long enough—" "She came out and touched him," Hara said, "and he stopped crying. Everyone knows a Fremen baby must get his crying done at birth if he's in Sietch, because he can never cry again lest he betray us on Hajar." "He'd cried enough," Alia said. "I just wanted to feel his spark, his life, that's all. And when he felt me, he didn't want to cry any more." "It's just made more talk among the people," Hara said. "Subie's boy is healthy?" Jessica asked. She saw that something was troubling Hara deeply and wondered at it. "Healthy as any mother could ask," Hara said. "They know Alia didn't hurt him. They didn't so much mind her touching him. He settled down right away and was happy. I was—" Hara shrugged. "It's the strangeness of my daughter, is that it?" Jessica asked. "It's the way she speaks of things beyond her years and of things no child her age could know, things of the past." "How could she know what a child looked like on Bela Tegeyus?" Hara demanded. "But he does," Alia said. "Subie's boy looks just like the son of Mitha born before the parting." "Alia," Jessica said, "I warned you." "But, Mother, I saw it, and it was true, and—" Jessica shook her head, seeing the signs of disturbance in Hara's face. "What have I borne?" Jessica asked herself. A daughter who knew at birth everything that I knew, and more. Everything revealed to her out of the corridors of the past by the Reverend Mothers within me. "It's not just the things she says," Hara said. "It's the exercises, too, the way she sits and stares at a rock, moving only one muscle beside her nose, or a muscle on the back of a finger, or—" "Those are the Bene Gesserit training," Jessica said. "You know that, Hara. Would you deny my daughter her inheritance?" "Reverend Mother, you know these things don't matter to me," Hara said. "It's the people and the way they mutter. I feel danger in it. They say your daughter's a demon, that other children refuse to play with her, that she's—" "She has so little in common with the other children," Jessica said. "She's no demon. It's just the—" "Of course she's not." Jessica found herself surprised at the vehemence in Hara's tone, glanced down at Alia. The child appeared lost in thought, radiating a sense of waiting. Jessica returned her attention to Hara. "I respect the fact that you're a member of my son's household," Jessica said. Alia stirred against her hand. "You may speak openly with me of whatever's troubling you." "I will not be a member of your son's household much longer," Hara said. "I've waited this long for the sake of my sons, the special training they receive as the children of Usul. It's little enough I could give them, since it's known I don't share your son's bed." Again Alia stirred beside her, half sleeping, warm. "You'd have made a good companion for my son, though," Jessica said. And she added to herself, because such thoughts were ever with her, companion, not a wife. Jessica's thoughts went then straight to the centre, to the pang that came from the common talk in the Sietch, that her son's companionship with Chani had become a permanent thing, the marriage. I love Chani, Jessica thought, but she reminded herself that love might have to step aside for royal necessity. Royal marriages had other reasons than love. "You think I don't know what you plan for your son?" Hara asked. "What do you mean?" Jessica demanded. "You plan to unite the tribes under him," Hara said. "Is that bad?" "I see danger for him, and Alia is part of that danger." Alia nestled closer to her mother, eyes opened now and studying Hara. "I've watched you two together," Hara said, "the way you touch. And Alia is like my own flesh because she's sister to one who is like my brother. I've watched over her and guarded her from the time she was a mere baby, from the time of the razzia when we fled here. I've seen many things about her." Jessica nodded, feeling disquiet begin to grow in Alia beside her. "You know what I mean," Hara said, "the way she knew from the first what we were saying to her. When has there been another baby who knew the water discipline so young? What other baby's first words to her nurse were, 'I love you, Hara'?" Hara stared at Alia. "Why do you think I accept her insults? I know there's no malice in them." Alia looked up at her mother. "Yes, I have reasoning powers, Reverend Mother," Hara said. "I could have been of the Sayadina. I have seen what I have seen." "Hara," Jessica shrugged, "I don't know what to say." And she felt surprised at herself because this literally was true. Alia straightened, squared her shoulders. Jessica felt the sense of waiting ended, an emotion compounded of decision and sadness. "We made a mistake," Alia said. "Now we need Hara." "It was the ceremony of the seed," Hara said, "when you changed the water of life, Reverend Mother, when Alia was yet unborn within you." "Need Hara?" Jessica asked herself. "Who else can talk among the people and make them begin to understand me?" Alia asked. "What would you have her do?" Jessica asked. "She already knows what to do," Alia said. "I will tell them the truth," Hara said. Her face seemed suddenly old and sad, with its olive skin drawn into frown wrinkles, a witchery in the sharp features. "I will tell them that Alia only pretends to be a little girl, that she has never been a little girl." Alia shook her head. Tears ran down her cheeks, and Jessica felt the wave of sadness from her daughter as though the emotion were her own. "I know I'm a freak," Alia whispered. The adult summation coming from the child mouth was like a bitter confirmation. "You're not a freak," Hara snapped. "Who dared say you're a freak?" Again Jessica marveled at the fierce note of protectiveness in Hara's voice. Jessica saw then that Alia had judged correctly. They did need Hara. The tribe would understand Hara, both her words and her emotions. For it was obvious she loved Alia as though this were her own child. "Who said it?" Hara repeated. "Nobody." Alia used a corner of Jessica's abba to wipe the tears from her face. She smoothed the robe where she had dampened and crumpled it. "Then don't you say it," Hara ordered. "Yes, Hara." "Now," Hara said, "you may tell me what it was like so that I may tell the others. Tell me what it is that happened to you." Alia swallowed, looked up at her mother. Jessica nodded. "One day I woke up," Alia said. "It was like waking from sleep, except that I could not remember going to sleep. I was in a warm, dark place, and I was frightened." Listening to the half-lisping voice of her daughter, Jessica remembered that day in the big cavern. "When I was frightened," Alia said, "I tried to escape, but there was no way to escape. Then I saw a spark, but it wasn't exactly like seeing it. The spark was just there with me, and I felt the spark's emotions soothing me, comforting me, telling me that way that everything would be all right. That was my mother." Hara rubbed at her eyes, smiled reassuringly at Alia. Yet there was a look of wildness in the eyes of the Fremen woman, an intensity as though they too were trying to hear Alia's words. And Jessica thought, what do we really know of how such a one thinks, out of her unique experiences and training and ancestry? "Just when I felt safe and reassured," Alia said, "there was another spark with us. And everything was happening at once. The other spark was the old Reverend Mother. She was trading lives with my mother, everything. And I was there with them, seeing it all, everything. And it was over. And I was them and all the others and myself. Only it took me a long time to find myself again. There were so many others." "It was a cruel thing," Jessica said. "No being should wake into consciousness thus. The wonder of it is you could accept all that happened to you." "I couldn't do anything else," Alia said. "I didn't know how to reject or hide my consciousness, or shut it off. Everything just happened. Everything." "We didn't know," Hara murmured. "When we gave your mother the water to change, we didn't know you existed within her." "Don't be sad about it, Hara," Alia said. "I shouldn't feel sorry for myself. After all, there's cause for happiness here. I'm a Reverend Mother. The tribe has two She broke off, tipping her head to listen. Hara rocked back on her heels against the sitting cushion, stared at Alia, bringing her attention then up to Jessica's face. "Didn't you suspect?" Jessica asked. "Shh," Alia said. A distant rhythmic chanting came to them through the hangings that separated them from the Sietch corridors. It grew louder, carrying distinct sounds now. "Ya, ya, yom, ya, ya, yom, muzain wala, ya, ya, yom, muzain wala." The chanters passed the outer entrance, and their voices boomed through to the inner apartments. Slowly the sound receded. When the sound had dimmed sufficiently, Jessica began the ritual, the sadness in her voice. It was Ramadan, and April on Bela Tegeus. "My family sat in their pool courtyard," Hara said, "in air bathed by the moisture that arose from the spray of a fountain. There was a tree of portugals, round and deep in colour, near at hand. There was a basket with mishmish and baklava and mugs of liban, all manner of good things to eat. In our gardens and in our flocks there was peace. Peace in all the land. Life was full with happiness until the raiders came," Alia said. "Blood ran cold at the scream of friends," Jessica said, and she felt the memories rushing through her out of all those other pasts she shared. "La, la, la, the women cried," said Hara. "The raiders came through the Mushtamal, rushing at us with their knives dripping red from the lives of our men," Jessica said. Silence came over the three of them, as it was in all the apartments of the sietch. The silence while they remembered and kept their grief thus fresh. Presently Hera uttered the ritual ending to the ceremony, giving the words a harshness that Jessica had never before heard in them. "We will never forgive, and we will never forget," Hera said. In the thoughtful quiet that followed her words, they heard a muttering of people, the swish of many robes. Jessica sensed someone standing beyond the hangings that shielded her chamber. "Reverend Mother?" A woman's voice, and Jessica recognized it, the voice of Tharthar, one of Stilgar's wives. "What is it, Tharthar?" "There is trouble, Reverend Mother." Jessica felt a constriction at her heart, an abrupt fear for Paul. "Paul!" she gasped. Tharthar spread the hangings, stepped into the chamber. Jessica glimpsed a press of people in the outer room before the hangings fell. She looked up at Tharthar, a small, dark woman in a red-figured robe of black. The total blue of her eyes trained fixedly on Jessica, the nostrils of her tiny nose dilated to reveal the plug scars. "What is it?" Jessica demanded. "There is word from the sand," Tharthar said. "Usul meets the Maker for his test. It is today. The young men say he cannot fail. He will be a sand rider by nightfall. The young men are banding for Arazia. They will raid in the north and meet Usul there. They say they will raise the cry then. They say they will force him to call out Stilgar and assume command of the tribes." Gathering water, planting the dunes, changing their world slowly but surely. These are no longer enough, Jessica thought. The little raids, the certain raids, these are no longer enough now that Paul and I have trained them. They feel their power. They want to fight. Tharthar shifted from one foot to the other, cleared her throat. "We know the need for cautious waiting," Jessica thought. "But there's the core of our frustration. We know also the harm that waiting extended too long can do us. We lose our senses of purpose if the waiting's prolonged. The young men say if Usul does not call out Stilgar, then he must be afraid," Tharthar said. She lowered her gaze. "So that's the way of it," Jessica muttered, and she thought, "Well, I saw it coming, as did Stilgar." Again Tharthar cleared her throat. "Even my brother Shoab says it," she said. "They will leave Usul no choice." Then it has come, Jessica thought. And Paul will have to handle it himself. The Reverend Mother dare not become involved in the succession. Alia freed her hand from her mother's, said, "I will go with Tharthar and listen to the young men. Perhaps there is a way." Jessica met Tharthar's gaze, but spoke to Alia. "Go then, and report to me as soon as you can." "We do not want this thing to happen, Reverend Mother," Tharthar said. "We do not want it," Jessica agreed. "The tribe needs all its strength." She glanced at Hera. "Will you go with him?" Hera answered the unspoken part of the question. "Tharthar will allow no harm to befall Alia. She knows we will soon be wives together, she and I, to share the same man. We have talked, Tharthar and I." Hera looked up at Tharthar, back to Jessica. "We have an understanding." Tharthar held out a hand for Alia, said, "We must hurry. The young men are leaving." They pressed through the hangings, the child's hand in the small woman's hand, but the child seemed to be leading. "If Paul Muad'Dib slays Stilgar, this will not serve the tribe," Hera said. "Always before it has been the way of succession, but times have changed." "Times have changed for you as well," Jessica said. "You cannot think I doubt the outcome of such a battle," Hera said. "Usul could not but win." "That was my meaning," Jessica said. "And you think my personal feelings enter into my judgment?" Hera said. She shook her head, her water rings tinkling at her neck. "How wrong you are!" Perhaps you think as well that I regret not being the chosen of Usul, that I am jealous of Chani? You make your own